So today I'm making a face cast, and these are all the products that I use for the process. So you're going to need plaster, a large bucket, water, plaster bandages, bin bags, sheets or towels, measuring scales, Prosaid, Nivea, Vaseline, cotton buds, cling film, scissors, a brush, tape, alginate and gloves, and probably a large box as well. So I started by slicking back the model's hair with hair gel so it's off the face, and I caught all the baby hairs as well. So I'm just using a brush that I found in my hair kit and just making sure that's all swept back across from the face. Next, I used cotton buds to apply a thin layer of Prosaid across the forehead and sides of the face. And in a minute, I'm just going to use some cling film, but I'm just making sure that I've got a nice even layer of Prosaid. So now, taking the cling film, I pulled it tightly across the forehead and the ears, and I made sure it was flattened out so it doesn't interfere with the face cast during the plaster process. And I'm just adjusting it in areas so I know that it fits all the way around. You can use a bald cap, but I kind of prefer cling film when I'm doing face casting, just because it's a cheap alternative and you don't have to faff around with fitting a bald cap either. So I used Nivea. You can use Vaseline or even a thick moisturiser to cover any areas of facial hair, lashes, and you can use things like plasters or masking tape for any piercings which cannot be removed. Ideally, the model will have a clean shaven face with no piercings, but that's not always the case, so we need to be able to adapt to this. So keep talking to your model throughout this. Agree on a system of yes or no answers and the use of tapping if they feel panicked or uncomfortable, just so that it can be removed quickly if needed. It is preferable to have an assistant with you who can focus on the model's comfort and ensure the process runs smoothly while you work to create the cast. Again, might not always be the case. So here I used a 1:4 ratio of alginate to water, so 250 grams of alginate and 1 kilogram of water. I used the Mold Life FX3, which has a setting time of around 3 to 5 minutes. And this first time I used warmish water, which you'll see was a mistake on my part for not testing the temperature first. I mixed the water and the alginate together, and then I started applying this with my hands around the nose area first, which you'll see. I was really careful around the nose area, consistently kind of keeping an eye on the nostrils to ensure no alginate blocked the airways, and I constantly checked in verbally with my model to ensure their comfort. About partway through the application, I realised my water was far too warm and the alginate was setting quicker than I wanted, which meant I couldn't work as freely with it. But mistakes happen, so I did end up removing the product, and I dried off my model and I went for the second go. On my second try, I used cold water, which was so much better, gave me a more fluid texture to work with and a longer application time for me to apply across the whole face. I started around the nose, then worked into the corners of the mouth and the eyes, really making sure to push into any areas where air bubbles can get trapped. And then I finished by filling in any gaps on the face where I could see skin and just checking I hadn't missed any spots. It's worth noting that this is quite a messy process, so that's why I had a bin bag and some carrier bags taped to his chest so that whenever I got any fallout, it just fell on there. And it has this kind of rubbery texture when it's set, so a lot of it just peels away. So once the alginate had set, I started applying the strips of plaster bandages across the nose area. I did this by dipping them in a tub of water, wringing out the excess, and then smoothing on top of the alginate. So you should see that now. I started here first so they'd be set first and then be the most strengthened part of the cast for when I remove it. And I just used small thin strips to cross around the airways so my model could still breathe through those nose holes that are left in the alginate. It It's so important that when you're applying these plaster bandages that you only stick them to the alginate and not the model's skin, as they do tend to heat up a bit when they dry as they go a bit more solid, and we don't want to irritate the client's skin. So after I'd done the nose area, I worked my way around the whole face, ensuring there were no blue sections showing through until I had a pretty solid layer of plaster bandages. And I think I probably put about 2 layers on, really, which give me a really nice solid base for the alginate to sit in. So once I'd finished applying all my plaster bandages, I left that to set for around 15 minutes. You'll know when it's set because it won't feel as wet anymore. It might feel a little bit warm, and if you tap on it with your nails slightly, it should sound pretty solid too. I did sit with my model while it was drying. I was just talking to them, reassuring them through the process, kind of talking to them about what I was doing. I am very chatty when I work, and I think it just helps ground your model a little bit and keep them in the environment. Sometimes when you're under there, it can make you go a little bit dizzy, a little bit out of it, but just having someone there to talk to is a nice little addition to this process. So for the removal, I asked my model to lean forwards and place their hands over the end of the cast. I also held the front and started to release the cling film around the face. I advised my model to make lots of different faces, scrunching up their eyes, nose, moving their cheeks and mouth to gently release the alginate from their face. So next I cleaned up my model's face, ensuring they kept their eyes closed so they could adjust to the lighting in the room and just talk to them to bring them back into the surroundings. After about 2 minutes, I asked them to open their eyes slowly, and we just finished cleaning everything off. As for my cast, I took some more plaster bandages that I cut up prior to the process, and I just started covering the nose holes on the outside of the cast, pressing a few layers over these holes to ensure that they were filled, so that when I pour the plaster in, it doesn't all leak out through those holes. And then I left that for, again, about 15 to 20 minutes to ensure it was set solid. For my plaster mix, I used 725 grams of plaster and 500 grams of water. I mixed this together in a bucket using a wooden spoon and wearing gloves to avoid contact with the skin. It won't seriously damage your skin, but it can just feel uncomfortable if it's left on for too long and also gets super messy. I poured a little bit of the plaster into the mould and used my fingers to press it into all the crevices, such as the nose, eyes and mouth, chasing out any air bubbles. And then I filled the rest of it up with plaster and left it to a set for around 4 hours to make sure it just properly set. Ideally, I'd probably leave this overnight just to ensure the plaster is solid. Once the plaster is set, it can be released from the mould. So you can do this using a craft knife to cut away the plaster bandage on the front, or you can use something to wedge out the plaster cast of the face, so something like a screwdriver maybe. You might have a few areas that need sanding down. You can use sandpaper or even a nail file to do this, which will get rid of any air bubble pockets. Areas where you might have had to place a plaster over a piercing or where the cling film is left indents on the cast. And that's it. Your face cast is ready to mould prosthetics onto. Make sure to store it somewhere cool, dry and safe, and check out my other videos for more tutorials on how to create and apply prosthetics.